Welcome to the Passing Through podcast. This episode is going to be a spooky one because I have a story for you. I'm going to try to keep it brief and to the point because I don't have a lot of battery on my laptop and I don't have a lot of time. The sounds you're hearing in the background are real thunder and lightning recorded in Slovenia at the location where the story took place. The storm happened before the events of the story, almost in a foreshadowing way, foretelling of the tension and danger and, for me, moments of terror even that were to come. And I'm not being hyperbolic here. I'm not trying to be dramatic to feed into the ambience and the natural fear that's baked into us as biological creatures when we hear thunder and rain and storms. I'm telling you this because I think it's worth capturing. As I'm passing through these places, not every story is a happy one or a good one. And that's one of the things that I want to show about this journey, because we often glamorize or romanticize the idea that we can just get in a van, give up everything we have, and go on an adventure, and that adventure is just going to be rosy and wonderful. Some aspects of it will be rosy and wonderful, and they have been so far. And we just got some great news about opportunities that just became available to us that we would have never imagined. So it is a wonderful journey, but there is danger. And I want to give you a little taste of what that danger was. Because right now I'm recording this not from Slovenia, but from Austria. We decided to leave Slovenia for safety reasons, I guess you could say. I don't know if I was actually in danger. That's the thing. That's the weird thing about the story. I don't know if I was in legitimate danger. I felt that I might be in danger. And not just me, but anybody who was at the farm might have been in danger as well. And I just want to note that I'm telling this story from my perspective, because that's the perspective that I know. I experience the world as an individual, even though intellectually and spiritually, and even on a felt level, I know that I don't exist solely as an individual. I exist through relationship to others. But my experience in the moment to moment is subjective. And so that's the place that I'm going to relay these events from. And then at the end of this story, I'm going to step back and talk about it from a more detached, objective perspective and try to make some meaning from this and extract some kind of lesson, because it's all still so fresh that I haven't had time to unpack it all. So that's going to be happening here with you as part of this episode. So bear with me. I'm going to try to tell this story in a way that is more conversational, as though I'd be talking to a friend on the phone. So I'm going to use a lot of, and then he said, and I was like, and then this happened, and then I was like. So that should bring us into a kind of immediate present sensibility. So here we go. We're on this farm, and we're there for about a week and a half maybe. And I recorded my previous episode from this farm. It's a beautiful place up in the Slovenian mountains. It's a place called Gore. And they're building an enormous hempcrete structure. It's one of the largest buildings made of hempcrete in all of Europe. So it's been exciting to work on it. Every day The walls are getting higher. We're making more and more progress. And things are going well. My hands are aching. They're covered in lime. My skin is dry and cracking. All of the joints in my fingers are aching and swollen, and it's hard to make a fist. It still is, even though we got some distance from there and we're not there anymore. I still feel the work that we were doing in my hands. I think it'll take several days for this feeling to go away. And so we're there and we're making progress, and we get news that another volunteer is going to join us. At that point, it was Asha and myself and another couple from Poland and the owners and the owner's parents. So there was 8 of us, all couples. And then a single individual was to arrive. The odd man, you could say. And when he arrives, there was something a little bit strange right from the beginning. Just to give you a description of what he looked like, he looked like Johnny Depp. He was a big guy, a bit taller than me, so he must have been 6'3", 6'4". And you might be wondering, what era of Johnny Depp? That's a pretty wide breadth there. Is he the skinny Edward Scissorhands Depp? Is he the drunken Jack Sparrow, Pirates of the Caribbean Depp? Is he the late Johnny Depp, Amber Heard trial Johnny Depp? Where is he on the spectrum? And I would say he's somewhere between Pirates of the Caribbean and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, if I had to place it. He's got the long hair like Jack Sparrow. He's got the kind of swagger and intrigue and mystery of Jack Sparrow, but he's also got the kind of unnerving, hard to name quality that the Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas Depp has. So he starts speaking, and pretty quickly he's telling us stories about how his father is a gypsy, and for all of his life, since he was raised by gypsies, he has felt he has some curse, or he has some demons that are haunting him, and he doesn't know if the demons are inside of him or outside of him, but they're always kind of stalking him and interfering with his thoughts and pushing him to do things that he doesn't want to do. And he feels uncomfortable, and these things are evil and dark. And when he says these things, he would get a certain look in his eye, and the tone of his voice would change, and the cadence of his speech would become a little bit erratic and hard to follow because there would be long pauses in between. But the air would be full of a kind of tension, like the kind of quality that air might take on before a storm. And as I was sitting there watching him, I was starting to feel, I couldn't place what I was feeling. I was feeling something, and I didn't know if what he was doing was putting on a kind of show or an act, or if he really believed the kinds of things he was saying. Because to try to give you a peek of what I mean, he was saying things like,
and then when I was homeless, I had these thoughts a lot. Dark thoughts, evil thoughts. And I didn't know if I could resist them. And maybe I didn't want to. Do you know what I mean?
and he would say something like that, and that creates a strange atmosphere. It creates, because I don't know what he meant, and to say that kind of takes the steam out of what he's saying. And I know that what he's saying seems, at least on the surface, very important to him and very powerful and very deep. And so if I say I don't know, this creates a disconnection. This maybe makes him feel rejected or alienated. And I know I'm not responsible for his feelings. But as a person in dialogue with somebody, in conversation, I'm trying to be charitable. And I'm trying to connect with what he's saying. And so I said, sorry, I'm not sure, actually. When you say evil thoughts, what do you mean exactly? And he pauses, and he gets a strange look in his eye, and he says,
well, I mean, I was homeless, and I was hungry, and I wanted to steal. I wanted to eat. Do you know what it's like to not have food, and to see people walking by with food?
And so these were the kinds of interactions that started to emerge, and it was a little unsettling, it was a little unnerving, but obviously in that kind of situation I want to add a little bit of levity. I want to disarm things a little bit. At least that's for me personally. So I made a joke and I said, okay, thanks for letting me know that. I'm going to make sure to lock the doors to my van tonight. Thanks for your honesty. And when I made this joke, I said it with a smile, and other people giggled and laughed, but he didn't. And I started to get the feeling that, okay, maybe this guy doesn't like me, or maybe he doesn't like this kind of humor, maybe he thinks I'm mocking him. I wasn't trying to mock him, but okay, I'll be a little bit more cautious with the way I interact with him. And so we flash forward to the next day, and when he and I are alone speaking, he starts saying things that are a little bit more strange. Each day I started to feel like things were getting a little bit more unusual. So on this day, he starts speaking to me early in the morning after breakfast. It's quiet. We've just finished eating. The workday hasn't begun yet. And we're alone in the living room. And he looks at me and he says,
"Are you a Christian?"
and I say, no, I was brought up Catholic, but... And then he would interrupt me as I was giving the answer.
Because I'm Christian. I believe in Jesus. I think I am Jesus. You know what I mean?
No, I don't, actually. I mean, isn't everybody Jesus in a way? Like the same with Buddhism, right? Isn't everybody have Buddha nature? Isn't everybody have God inside of them? And then he would just look at me and not say anything. And then he said,
I don't know about that. I've healed people. Or I think I have. Do you believe in healing?
and then I said, yeah, of course I believe in healing, but I'm curious what your story is, if you want to share it. And he said,
I don't know if I want to share it. I don't know if I could explain it. I don't know if I've even healed anyone, actually. I think I did. But how do I know if it was real or if it was an illusion? You know, sometimes these demons, they make me confused. And I don't know what's real. And I really want to. And I know I'm intelligent, and I know that that's one of my gifts is my intelligence, but I don't know if I healed her.
and I said, okay, yeah, that's okay. And then it would often be that I'd be speaking and I would say something, but he would interrupt me and just say,
Well, I believe in demons, for sure. I know that they're real. And I've slept with a demon. I don't know if he was an angel or a demon, but it was real.
and the interactions would go on like this. And then he started to say,
And you know, I could read minds.
and I said, really? Okay, what am I thinking? And he just looked at me and didn't answer me. But he gave me a strange look. It was a look where it seemed to me like he believed that he knew what I was thinking. You know, he thought he knew what I was thinking. I wasn't thinking anything. Actually, in that moment, what I was thinking was the word penis, just to see if he would say penis. And he didn't say anything. But there was just a strange look that he was giving me. And it was making me feel a little bit uncomfortable. Like either he was trying to read my mind, or he thought he could read my mind and he didn't like what he saw in there. Or maybe he actually did read my mind and he felt like embarrassed saying that you're thinking of penis. I don't know. But it was weird. And then he said,
Do you know, I believe certain masters can read people's minds and influence their thoughts and emotions. And certain demons have robbed me of my emotions.
And it would be like these kind of conversations, and it gets kind of dark and very heavy and very strange because it was difficult for me to interact in these things. I didn't know what to say. So I'm like, okay, yeah, how long has that been? And before I could even finish the sentence, he would just start talking again. So it was as though he wasn't listening or he didn't care what I wanted to say. He wanted to kind of go on a sort of non-linear monologue where there were pauses for me to say something, but if what I was saying was too long or not even complete or just at the wrong time, he would just start speaking. And so it made these conversations very tense and strange. And so I gave him feedback and I said, can I give you some feedback right now? And maybe this was a mistake on my part, but he didn't say anything. He didn't protest. And I said, I find it pretty challenging to speak with you because when I'm speaking, I feel like you either aren't interested in what I'm saying, or I'm not saying the right thing, or you don't want to respond to anything that I'm saying and you just want to keep talking sometimes about something else or the same thing, but you haven't even addressed what I just said or answered my question. And yeah, I don't know how to navigate a conversation with you. And he said, he didn't say anything at first. He just looked at me and it was very awkward and I didn't know what he was going to do because with his body and his energy on an energetic level, there was always some kind of simmering violence. I could say, I don't know how to describe it. Like he wasn't overtly aggressive or angry about anything, but there was just this sensation that there was a lot of rage below the surface. And I didn't know if he was directing that at me or what was happening in that moment. So I just was kind of looking at him and waiting for him to say something. And he said,
well, I think it's your American accent.
Which is very odd to me when he said that because many people, it's not something to brag about. It's just something that's happened. A lot of people in Europe often tell me that they like speaking to me in English because it's very easy to understand what I'm saying. And for me, it was a weird compliment because I never thought that. I don't know why that is, but people say it a lot. And this was the first time someone was telling me the opposite. So for me, it was strange. And it doesn't mean it wasn't true for him. It just was, oh, okay, if my accent is a problem for you, I could speak slower or, I don't know what we could do. And then he just started talking again. And he starts telling me, I don't want to go into all the details of his personal life, but he starts to tell me personal stories of, some love that he had and how it fell apart and how this person was really a demon just sucking his energy away. And I tried to connect and say that this was something that happens sometimes. Love doesn't always work out. Sometimes it's short-lived, but it doesn't mean that the person was a demon. It just means that, you weren't right for one another. And then he gave me a scowling look of contempt and said,
I know demons are real. You don't know what you're talking about.
And it was just very tense. And so I decided that this was a good time to end this conversation. And so I walk out of the room. Unfortunately, I had to go back in the room because my phone was charging in there, my hat was in there, there were things that I needed in there. And so he says, and I turn, because my back was to him, and I turn and I look at him to see if he was talking to me or what that was. And I said, what? And he says,
we'll just keep that between us.
And I said, keep that between us? Keep what between us? And he's like,
that thought you just had. I told you I could read minds. I know what you're thinking. I'm not stupid.
So I said, excuse me? And he says,
you were thinking that those gay things again, weren't you?
And I said, no, actually, I wasn't thinking anything at all. But are you perhaps familiar with the psychological defense mechanism of projection? And he didn't say anything, and he looked at me and he shook his head no. And I said, well, yeah, it means sometimes when someone has certain thoughts or ideas that they are uncomfortable with themselves, they put that in someone else's head because it might be more acceptable that way, and they project what they're feeling onto someone else. So maybe that's what you're doing there. I don't know. Because the story he was telling me of the love that he had was of another man. So I don't know. But it got weird, and the tension was building in the room, and I just decided I'm going to remove myself from the room, and I left and carried on with the day. But still feeling weird, still feeling uncomfortable, still feeling strange about that interaction. And to think that someone believes that they could read my mind, I'm starting to realize that this person is perhaps having a mental health crisis, perhaps suffering through some kind of, I don't know, schizophrenia or some kind of, I'm not a mental health professional. I don't want to make diagnoses on people. I'm not exactly sure what was going on there. I felt that reason and logic and trying to connect on an emotional level weren't really working. It wasn't really an option, because every time I tried that, it didn't have the intended effect. There was a misunderstanding, there was tension, and so I just decided to keep my distance. And this was creating some problems too, because I would notice that he would be looking at me and not saying anything, but you could tell that he was intently thinking something, that he did not like that I was keeping some distance between him, or maybe he felt like I was keeping a secret, or I don't know what he thought. But I knew he was thinking something. And so at one point, after he was giggling to himself, just sitting there, not saying, looking at me, and he would giggle, but not in a funny kind of interesting way. I don't know what an interesting way would be. But in a very disturbing, unsettling way, a kind of laughter that you might see in like a scary movie or something. But after this, he looks at me and he says,
"Why don't you say anything?"
And I said, "What?" He's like,
"Yeah, why don't you say anything? Do you have something to say?"
And I said, "Well, there's a quote from the Dalai Lama that I like that says, 'Only speak if what you have to say is more beautiful than the silence.' And I don't feel a special urge to say anything, really. I'm comfortable with the silence. But if there's something that you want to say or talk about, feel free." And then he didn't say anything. He just gave me that same look again. And so I felt uncomfortable and I backed away. And now all of this is creating this kind of stew, right? It's creating this culture of tension and unease and discomfort and weirdness. And I generally don't like it, so I'm avoiding him more. And later that day or the next day, I think it was at night by the fire, we're sitting around the fire and we're all talking, and suddenly he starts talking about how, evil, like he just has these thoughts that are so full of anger and revenge and vengeance, and he wants to hurt people, and he wants to take revenge on the people who have hurt him. And it was just really odd and really, I made a joke and I said something like, that doesn't sound very Christian to me. Like I don't remember Jesus talking so much about revenge. And yeah, like I started to realize perhaps my kind of cavalier, trying to be funny attitude was causing more problems. So I just stopped that, and I started to just be, I guess, in a way, timid around him, because I started to feel like I don't know how to interact with this guy. I don't know what to say to him. There's not really space conversationally for me to do anything. So I'm just going to kind of like pull back. And then the next morning, we're in the kitchen, and this is after lunch, actually, not in the morning, and we're doing dishes. And he comes in the kitchen, and he's just standing behind me. And it's a fairly small kitchen, but he's just standing there. And I feel his presence, this feeling of someone over your shoulder. Biologically, it activates something, especially when there's now a history or there's a pattern of interaction being established. And so I look over my shoulder and I see him looking at me, and he has a kind of sly look in his eye. And I say, "Do you need something?" And he says,
"Well, yeah, I'm thirsty. I need some water."
So I say, "Okay, go for it." So he goes and he takes the water, and then he just goes back to where he is, standing behind me as I'm drying the dishes. And I'm starting to feel, heat on the back of my neck. I'm starting to feel anger. I'm starting to feel frustration. I guess probably you could say also a bit of fear, because I'm thinking like, all right, this is unusual. This is weird. What's going on? Am I going to have to are we going to have some kind of fight in the kitchen right now? Like, what is this? This is like some weird prison shit or something. Like, is this some kind of psychological intimidation? And I'm feeling like, I'm not trying to be intimidated here. I'm just doing dishes. Like, get the fuck out of the kitchen. And then I realize, maybe I'm being ridiculous. I'm being unreasonable. Maybe none of this is happening, and I'm imagining it, and I'm projecting something that isn't there. So I turn around again, and I look at him, and he just has this look in his eye. It's just this unsettling look in his eye, and I'm looking at him, and I give him a look too, like I see it, and I know you're here, and it seems to me like you're up to something. So energetically, I'm communicating with him too, and he's just standing there. And so I'm thinking, what do I do? Asha's here, she's in the kitchen, she's washing dishes, I'm drying them. I don't really want a scene to unfold in the kitchen, so I want to try to disarm this peacefully, but I know I'm compromised. I could feel the anger in me. I could feel like my adrenaline is starting to pump. My heart rate is increasing. I could feel my palms are getting sweaty. And so I look at him and I just say, "Hey, I'm feeling uncomfortable that you're standing behind me in the kitchen when I'm here washing the dishes. You said you needed water. You got the water. What do you doing? Why are you here?" And maybe this was too confrontational, but I swung, I didn't mean for it to come out this way, but this is just how it came out. And when I said it this way, I just felt this dissonance between us. And he said,
"Oh, well, I just don't want to come in the way. I don't want to get in the way and be rude and come and take water. I don't want to disturb Asha. I don't want to disturb anybody."
And I said, "You're not going to be disturbing Asha. You can take the water, right, Asha?" And Asha just says, "Yeah." And he takes the water, and he stands back to where he was, and he looks one more time, and then he just slowly walks out of the room. And, after this, I'm feeling a bit rattled. I'm feeling like, I don't know what that was about. That was weird. Was that a threat? What was this whole interaction? And then I told her about the thing the previous day where he's telling me he's reading my mind. She's been there for the conversations where he's spoken about these demons and evil thoughts and this revenge and all of this stuff. And so I'm beginning to feel like maybe this isn't the place to be. I don't know. This person seems unstable. They seem liable to become violent. And I don't know what's going on in this person's head, but I'm starting to feel uncomfortable being here now. The other piece of information that you should know is that, remember that Polish couple that I spoke about earlier that was working with us? Well, yeah, they left the day before. They didn't say why. They just left. And so there was something a little weird. I had my suspicions that maybe something happened between them. They just left and said that they felt uncomfortable. They didn't like the energy. And so they were gone. And I'm telling Asha now, after we do the dishes, I say, "Listen, I think we need to leave here. These interactions are getting increasingly weird. You were there in the kitchen just now. How did that feel to you?" And she was saying, "Yeah, it was a bit unusual. And given everything that's happened, yeah, I could understand why you might want to leave. And yeah, if you want to go, I guess we can go." But she didn't quite seem as rattled by the whole thing as me. And I don't know why that was. Maybe I'm more sensitive to energies. Maybe I just had more one-on-one interactions. Maybe it was the kind of male on male thing. I don't know. But I decided, yeah, you know what? I'm going to tell the host, I'm going to mention this and just say, I'm having increasing tensions. Things are mounting between me and this guy. And I think it's time for us to leave. I don't want you to tell this guy he has to leave. Maybe it's just me. We don't get along. I don't know. But when I went outside to go do this and speak to the host, Johnny is already there with the host. And the atmosphere is weird. As soon as I walk out, I felt like I walked out into a cloud of cigarette smoke or something. And everything's quiet. And I'm wondering, fuck, were they just able to hear the conversation that I had inside with Asha? Like, okay, I don't know. So I'm putting on my shoes. And as I'm doing that, Johnny says,
"Hey, Danny, I'm sorry that I made you feel uncomfortable in the kitchen before."
And everyone's looking at me, the host and his wife. And I look at him and I say, well, you know, that's not exactly how I would phrase it. I would say, I didn't say you made me feel uncomfortable. I said I felt uncomfortable because there was somebody, you were over my shoulder. And, you know, we have an expression in English, like when someone's standing over your shoulder, it's an unpleasant feeling. It's kind of nerve-wracking. You know, I don't know if it activates something biologically, but I'm just trying to explain why that was that I was feeling that way. And he said,
"Okay, I understand."
But there was some weird energy outside, and I figured, you know what? Let me take the opportunity to try and have a discussion about this here in front of everybody as a community, instead of hiding this from the guy and talking to the host about it behind his back. Let's just get this out in the open. And maybe this wasn't a good idea, but this is what I did. And I said, you know, what just happened in the kitchen right there, that wasn't the first time that I felt uncomfortable around you, actually. And then I could feel the tension mounting, and the air was getting thicker and heavier. And he was looking at me, and he was saying, you know what?
"I feel uncomfortable around you."
And I said, okay. Can you say why that is, or what I've done? Because actually the other day you said to me, like, why don't I talk to you? Like, so I think we haven't had many interactions, definitely none that I have initiated. So I'm wondering, like, what I'm doing that makes you feel uncomfortable. And he said,
"Well, I can't say. I can't name that. I don't know, actually. I need to think about it."
I said, okay, so you feel uncomfortable, but you don't have any evidence or examples why, but it's just something that you're feeling. And he says,
"Yeah."
I say, okay. And then the host's wife kind of comes to my defense, and she says, well, I don't think Danny would be doing anything to make you feel uncomfortable. Actually, I've felt uncomfortable with you as well. And she goes on to talk about her experience. And then the other host actually starts to say he felt uncomfortable too. And now I'm starting to get nervous that the guy is feeling attacked. So I try to intervene and soften it a little bit and say, hey, listen, I didn't know that other people are feeling these things. I just thought this was something that was going on between you and I. And I'm not trying to make you feel singled out or attacked or, you know, like you're doing something wrong here. But has anyone given you this feedback before? He says,
No, never. I've never had a conversation like this. This is very weird and uncomfortable. And yeah, I don't know what to say.
And I said, what are you feeling right now, if you don't mind sharing? And he said,
anger, rage. Like, I'm very, very angry right now. Like, I don't know what I might do.
And that phrase, like, I don't know what I might do. When someone's been talking about demons and revenge and evil and these kind of things, that phrase sounds kind of benign and innocent to someone who might be listening to this podcast. But in that moment, when you're up in the mountains with no service, away from the rest of the world, and you're there with a guy who's acting this way and has this look in his eye and is saying these things, it's very unsettling. And so we kind of talk a bit back and forth. The conversation gets a bit weirder, more talk about demons and Jesus and devils. And we kind of say, hey man, I think you should take a walk and calm down, and we're going to get started on work and you could join us. But then I'm thinking, you know what? I don't want to be on a construction site on scaffolding up at 3 stories high with a guy who's telling me that I'm making him feel uncomfortable and he's thinking of demons and he can read my thoughts and all of these things. I'm feeling like maybe this guy's going to decide to push me off of the scaffolding. Who knows what's going to happen? So I express the desire to work on a separate task or be segregated from this guy, that I'm just not feeling safe being in this kind of situation. It's very unusual and I don't know how to proceed. I'm happy to keep helping, but I don't want to continue in the way that we've been going. So one thing leads to another, and we end the workday, and the host leaves to go take his dad and his mom and his partner out of there. And Asha and I decide we're going to leave as well and just go get some space and get some distance from things. Then we go have dinner in the town separately. While we're having dinner, I start thinking, you know what? He might be thinking that all of us left him and we're all plotting against him. We're all together somewhere talking about how bad he is and how evil he is. Because he also has these thoughts about like being left and no one wants to help him and his problems are too much for people. And whenever he brings this kind of stuff up, people get scared and they get uncomfortable. You know, he said these things. And so I'm thinking, what must this be like for him who's alone at the house right now? It can't be good. Like, maybe this wasn't a good idea. It was natural because everyone was spooked. Everyone just wanted some distance to get away. But now it feels like this might be causing harm. This isn't producing a good effect. It isn't letting out stress and giving space to think. It might actually feel like abuse to him. And so I mentioned this to Asha, and she says, come on, like, don't think of it like that. This is just you thinking what it could be like. Yeah, maybe that's what's happening, but maybe not. Maybe he's happy to have the space. Like, we can't know that. And I say, yeah, it's true. And then we start thinking like, okay, I guess let's just go back. We'll spend the night and we'll leave in the morning. But then something in my stomach starts changing, and I start to think, man, like, is this the scene in the horror movie where you're like, don't go back to the house? You know? Like, we got away, we left the place, and now we're gonna go back? Like, what if he's there, like, he's been brooding, and he's like convinced, and the demons have been whispering in his ear for 3 or 4 hours about how evil all of us are and how we mean to harm him and how he needs to take revenge when we come back. And you know, I'm thinking of all of these things in my head as we're going up in the dark, driving back to the top of this mountain on this, you know, lightless road, just winding up into the dark and the trees. And it felt sick in my stomach. It felt like, oh my God, this is, you know, how people get killed. Like, this is the scene in the movie where you're screaming at the screen in the movie theater saying, oh my God, what are you doing? And then I'm thinking how the place is called Gore, you know, it's spelled Gore, Gore, and we're going up the road back into the place, like into the belly of the beast. And I'm thinking, fuck, man, like the way that the place is, when we drive the car in, we have to close a gate, and then like the car doesn't have enough space to maneuver, so there's no hasty exits. You know, we have to do a complicated turn up a hill and carefully go back down, and there's not much space, and you could fucking topple over the edge of a cliff. And I'm just thinking, holy fuck, like, if things do fall apart once we go in here, like, I don't know if we can easily get out of here. Like, this is kind of a bad situation that we're in now. And I'm just spiraling, you know, my own kind of paranoia and delusion and, you know, fear is getting the best of me. And Asha's even noticing, because I'm saying these things to her, and she's like, you're kind of getting a bit crazy right now. And I'm like, yeah, am I though? Like, the guy is saying things that are so unsettling and disturbing that I don't know what he's thinking. I don't know what he's capable of. I don't know what he's done. I don't know what he wants to do. He keeps saying things, evil thoughts, like revenge. I don't know. Like, I'm just trying to keep us safe, because our obligations to the host and to do this work, it's like that comes second to our safety, doesn't it? So I was having this kind of really conflicted feeling, and we pull up, and then I'm thinking like, fuck, what if he snapped and he just went crazy on everybody that's there, and everyone's fucking dead, and we're gonna show up in there and we're fucking next, you know? Like, yeah, I was not in a good place going back up that hill. I in hindsight, like, I feel so much joy and happiness now that I'm not there. But in that moment, I felt so much dread and unease And we pull in and we go up, and I see that there's a light on in the house, and I see that he's in the house. I see him looking at me from the window, and it was so fucking spooky. It was like a horror movie. It was like Michael Myers, where you see like the flash of light and there's the white face there in the mirror staring at you. It was like this in the window, and I'm thinking, fuck, man. Like, I'm not trying to project all my fears and things onto this guy. He's just a human being. But because I don't know him, and because of the things he said and the way that these interactions have happened, I just feel so, I have nothing to hold on to. I have no assurances of anything about this guy. And so, you know, we just go up, we go in the house, he's there. I said hello when he's in the kitchen and just quickly went up into the room to lock the bathroom door and shower. And, you know, when we came back downstairs, he wasn't there, and the hosts were there. And we just had a chat about, listen, I'm not feeling good about this. I'm leaving tomorrow. You know, sorry about this, but I have a choice. I could even leave tonight if that's what you prefer, but we'd rather leave in the light in the morning. But yeah, I don't know if I'm safe here. Like, I'm not trying to say anything bad about the guy, that he's evil or anything like that, but it is what it is. And so we had a chat, and they said they totally understand. They also have unsettling feelings, and they're not sure if this is safe or what this is. And they've never had an experience like this before. And yeah, it's fine if we leave. So we go to bed, and we wake up in the morning, and we get ready to leave. And obviously we see him again. He's at breakfast. He gets the news that we're leaving, and everybody's leaving, in fact. And so it's time to pack our things. We go back to say goodbye to him, just because I wanted to kind of close things with him. I wanted him to feel like, hey, listen, there's no bad blood between us, there's no problems, but are we good? Like, how do you feel after yesterday and everything that's happened? And he said,
well, I feel mixed feelings. On the one hand, I feel like good that I was able to speak about this, and so I have some sense of calm. But on the other hand, I feel a lot of anger and rage still, and I feel like I might do something.
And again, with that expression, like, I might do something, it just, something makes like my skin crawl when he said that. And I'm just like, fuck, man, like, I don't know what that means exactly. I don't want to know what that means. I want you to focus on how you feel good that you're able to talk about it. And that's basically what I said to him. I said, listen, I don't have any bad feelings for you. If I came across as aggressive yesterday, I apologize. That wasn't my intention. I was just trying to establish a boundary. And, you know, I don't think that you're some monstrous person. I just don't know you. And the things that you said are unusual. That's all it is. No one did anything wrong here. I didn't do anything wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. And, yeah, like, I hope that you find peace on your journey. And yeah, we tried to have an exit, but even the goodbye was kind of like drawn out, and there were some tense moments, and I don't really know how to feel about it. I know that I don't have hard feelings about the guy, and I know that I'm happy to be here, and that everybody's safe, and nobody got hurt, and nothing bad happened. But I do know, I don't know, but I feel that we came really close to something really bad happening, because I've met these kinds of people before. Like, my father was a tough guy. He was a biker. He was riding with the Hells Angels and all kind of crazy people. And I met some of these friends, and I know what they look like and how they move, how they talk, what their eyes look like. So you know when someone's capable of violence or murder, even, you know, to use the M word. And the eerie thing about all of this is, while we were leaving today, driving to Austria, we messaged the Polish guys who left, and Asha asked them, yeah, so why did you leave? Did you have any issues with Johnny? And the girl sent us a voice message, and she said, actually, you know what? That night after the campfire, when he was talking, I saw him in the morning, and he asked me what I thought about the campfire. And I told him, oh, you know, it was okay. And he said, what did you think about what I said? And she's like, I don't know. I guess you're going through some stuff. And he said,
yeah, I'm going through some stuff, and that was really important for me, that fire, because if it didn't happen, if I couldn't say those things that I said, if I was holding that inside, I would kill someone.
I would kill someone. And it wasn't like, she said that it was said in the kind of way that was like, she doesn't know if he was just making a figure of speech, or she doesn't know what the deal was, but it was said in a way that was probably also made her feel very uncomfortable, and her skin was crawling, and they left soon after that. So I don't know. I can't say. I can't read someone else's thoughts. I don't know if I was in actual danger. I don't know if anyone was. Was he speaking in metaphor? Does he really think he was Jesus? Is he really haunted by demons? Does he really believe he can heal people and read people's minds? I don't know. I don't know. All I know is that I felt very uncomfortable. I felt unsafe. And I feel like we made the right move to get out of there. Maybe we could have even done it sooner. In the future, I think I wouldn't deliberate on it so much and try to think about what this person's intentions are. I would just feel what it's like in my body and err on the side of caution. So that's my perspective. That's the story. We emerged unscathed, and everything was ultimately okay. But when I step back from this story and I think about it, and I think about it from his perspective, and I think about what it must be like for someone, because he said as much. He said, listen, I try to talk to people about this, and people, he said he's tried to talk to therapists, and they get scared, and they don't know what to do, and they want to get away from him. And it makes him feel alone. It makes him feel misunderstood, unseen, unheard. He lacks community. He has no outlet for these kind of things. So he feels like he has to hold them alone. And this weight, it gets heavier and heavier, and you get more tired and angry and frustrated, and you feel like no one cares about you, and no one understands you, and no one wants you, and that no one wants to listen to your problems. You don't get to speak about yours. Other people can speak about theirs, but you just have to sit there because you have the weird problems. You're the guy who's talking about demons and Jesus and all of this stuff. And I can understand that, like from a human perspective, if I was that person and I was having these things that I felt were real and part of my life, and things that I was battling and were causing me harm and suffering, and I couldn't speak to people about it because they looked at me like I was strange and I was some lunatic. He even said when we were saying goodbye,
I don't feel like there are safe spaces for me to talk about these things, because whenever I do, people make me feel like I should be put in an institution, like I should be put in a psych ward. And I don't think there's a place for me in this world.
And it hurt me to hear this. Like, it hurts me now when I think about it, and I feel like, fuck. Like, so many of us, we talk a big game. When it comes to spirituality and shadow and difficult emotions and like loving the other and welcoming the other and integrating the shadow and metabolizing trauma, and that everybody's one and everything's connected and all is love and all of this, we talk a big game. And even myself on this podcast, I've said these kind of things. And when I was in the moment, when I was confronted face to face with somebody who was challenging all of those intellectual assumptions and theories on a real embodied level, on a visceral, energetic level, I felt fear. I felt I wanted to withdraw from it. I didn't know it was too much. I couldn't hold it. I couldn't hold the space for it. And it felt like there was a danger to me, to those around me, to him. It's hard to describe, but it made me realize that there is a big difference between talking about these things and actually being in a situation where you have to try to give love and compassion and empathy to someone who's talking about doing evil deeds and taking revenge and feeling like, he even said peace is not an option. Peace is a fantasy. Peace is a delusion. There is no peace. There is only pain and suffering and anger and confusion and illusion. That was his theory. And in one sense, he's not wrong. Those things are there. They exist, and they can blot out all senses of love. If it's a yin-yang and love is the white part, there is this dark part. Even within the love, there's that little dot. And I don't know. I'm trying to chew on this, and I'm trying to see what really spiritual, advanced spiritual practitioners would do in a situation like this. Because even the guy, the host, is a Buddhist. He's a practicing Buddhist. I think he might even be ordained. I'm not certain. But every day he's meditating, he's doing Tai Chi. And even he was saying, he wanted the guy to go. He felt uncomfortable. He didn't know, how to handle the situation. So I'm not saying that I'm having like a crisis of faith in in spiritual teachings and in this kind of stuff, but I am questioning things. I am thinking, how do we meet this kind of force when this is what's passing through, when there's a storm passing through and it's scary and there's thunder and there's wind and there's darkness and things are howling through the trees and the rain is pelting down and the thunder is just growling from the sky. How do you meet that with a hug instead of cowering under some fucking dense pile of stones somewhere inside of a cave, just waiting, praying for it to pass? It takes a certain type of courage, and I don't think that I am necessarily a timid person when it comes to these kinds of things. I think I can have hard conversations. I think I could be honest. I think I could be authentic. And for me, I didn't know what to do with that energy. It was so heavy and so dark and so unknown. I couldn't see through it. I couldn't feel around in it. It just felt so hostile and alien and savage that I didn't know how I could help, how I could pacify it, how I could soothe it, how I could show it that love was there and love was accessible and could help it. I don't know. So this is my question. This is the thing that I'm chewing on in the aftermath of all of this, is how in the future, when confronted with something like this, can compassion and love be summoned and given to someone to help, to reduce harm, to be in service. Because that's what it's about at the end of the day, right? And did I do that by engaging the guy, by listening, by offering to help him, by telling him I would reach out to certain therapists that I knew, that I would, I even gave him advice. I offered to, I tried, but I ultimately felt like what I had to offer and what I could give wasn't what was needed. Because you can't really heal someone. You can't help someone. They have to want to help themselves. And you could only give off a certain vibration, a certain energy. They could resonate with it. They could vibe with it and find that within themselves to start to do the healing. But you can't just beam some healing at them and erase all of their sense of demons and just fill them with radiant light. Or at least I can't. And probably most people can't. And so what do we do in these times when we see someone like this, when we see a real other, when someone who feels so alien to us, but is still a human being in pain, feeling feelings, feeling confusion, feeling lost? How do we connect with these people? How do we help them? How do we make them feel seen and cared for? Because that was the thing that I was trying to give in the goodbye, was just to say, hey man, like I saw you here. Like, I'm glad that we talked. I'm glad that we had the chance to do these things, even though it was terrifying and unnerving for me at times, and it made me see some parts of myself. But, like, do you feel okay? Like, do you feel like there are people who care? Like, there are people who want to connect with you and help you, or that everybody is just out to harm you and no one really cares and love isn't a possibility for you? And he said, unfortunately, he said that,
I don't know if love is a possibility for me, and I don't think that people care, and I think most places are not safe. I haven't found one for me, and I'm getting kicked out of here You know, everybody's feeling uncomfortable here. And instead of talking to me about it, they're telling me I'm leaving. So what lesson do you want me to take from that?
And he was, you know, I get goosebumps thinking about it because he's absolutely fucking right. Like, yeah, like what should he take from that? I don't know. On the other hand, you can't expect people to hold your burdens for you like that, especially when they're scalding hot, searing burdens that people are not used to holding and don't have the capacity or ability to hold. You can't really be mad at them for not holding it. You know, it would be like giving a 5-year-old a 50-pound dumbbell and being upset that it can't hold it, and just walking around saying, children just aren't fucking, they can't hold this weight. What am I going to do? No one can help me. Like, you got to find somebody who can hold it. So, I mean, I don't know what's right and what's wrong here, but I'm at an hour of this very long ramble. So I apologize. I'm sweating in the car here. It is not as cool as you would think in Austria, but yeah, if anybody has any ideas or answers, feel free to comment. If you think what do you do in a case like that where you meet somebody and it's the darkness, it's the shadow. You meet the shadow in a real embodied form. It is the shadow. How do you integrate the shadow? How do you connect with the shadow? How do you hold space for the shadow when the shadow is threatening potentially your existence? You know, if you say the wrong thing to the shadow, it smothers you maybe. It just blots out all of that life light. You're just gone. You're extinguished. How do you deal with that? You know, it's... I don't know. Tell me your thoughts. But in this episode, more than others, I want to reiterate the point here, which is be good to one another. Because I think at the end of the day, in my opinion, maybe that's the only thing that we can do. Maybe that's it. I say it every podcast episode, but this time I feel it more than the other times, because I feel like maybe if more people were good to one another, it would be harder for these things to grow in that way, and for someone to feel so alone and so disconnected and like they don't have a sense of place. So really try to be good to one another, even when it's hard, even when you feel uncomfortable, even when maybe you think the person doesn't deserve it even. And I'm not saying that was the case here. I'm just saying sometimes there have been times when I'm angry at somebody, or when I think someone's conduct has been inappropriate or disrespectful. And maybe I feel like, oh, why should I be nice to them? Still, I think trying to be good to people, having kindness, having empathy, even when it's hard or difficult or you don't want to, maybe it's more important those times than the times when it's easy. So yeah, be good. And I will talk to you next week.